Okay, there we go. So if you could put in the chat the grade you teach, the subject you teach, and your favorite thing about teaching. Let's see who we've got. Good morning, everybody. I love seeing teachers that like their students. You don't see that all the time. Love it. All right. So welcome, everybody, on this kind of dreary Tuesday. I thought it was supposed to be nice today. But hopefully the sun will come out. And we are going to get started. So if you haven't introduced yourself, please take a minute to do that. And so welcome to this module on social emotional learning. It's course D. There are 6 courses in this module. They're all connected to each other, but they all stand alone as well. So if you haven't taken any of the other ones, it's not a problem. And if you had, then that's great too. So the focus for today is going to be culturally responsive and sustaining SEL. And I'm Christine, and I will be your facilitator for today. I've been a literacy coach in New York City for about 10 years, and I have been with Solved Consulting for about 4 years. It will be 4 years in the spring. I'm also a mindfulness coach, and I'm very passionate about SEL for students and for teachers. So I am happy to be here. We've gone through this, and if you just logged in, if you would like to introduce yourself in the chat, that would be great. These are our norms for today. Be as present as you can be. We have protocols that we're going to stick to, and the goal is to hear all voices. We will start and end on time. We take an inquiry stance, and we ground our statements in evidence. So this is where we are in the module for social emotional learning. If you have not taken some of the other courses, these are your other options. And for today, we're starting with course D, and then course E will be taught at 10:30, and course F will be taught at 1 o'clock. So this is our agenda for today. We're going to think about, well, the questions that we're going to be talking about are how we can incorporate culturally responsive practices across learning environments. And when they say that, generally these courses were written with the thought of both in-person and virtual, but you can think of across learning environments in other ways as well, across classrooms or schools. And what methods we can use to embed culturally responsive practices and SEL into instruction. And so for today, our objectives are to describe the culturally responsive considerations for designing social emotional learning and consider the strategies that we can use to embed CRSE into SEL into learning opportunities for students. The note catcher has been put in the chat. I'm going to stop sharing for just a second, and I will put it in the chat again so that if you logged in a little bit later, you should see it there now. And you will need that a little bit later on. So you'll have to make a copy of it. And please feel free to stop me at any time if you have questions or comments that you would like to make. And you can either put them in the chat or you can unmute yourself and just kind of call it out. Okay, so these are the key terms that we're going to be talking through today: self-efficacy, funds of knowledge, civic learning, and project-based learning. Self-efficacy is a person's belief in their capacity to do the steps necessary to reach specific goals. And our goal is to support student self-efficacy through learning opportunities. These learning opportunities may be academic, but they may also just be purely, not purely, but they may also evolve through conversations with students that we cultivate in the classroom, which may or may not be around academic content. Funds of knowledge are the skills and knowledge that students acquire in their communities, families, and peer groups. And civic learning is the process through which learners develop the knowledge, skills, and commitments to interact effectively with others, improve their communities and the broader society, and participate in democracy. We will also talk about project-based learning, which you are probably familiar with. Whether you've taught using this method or not, you've probably heard of it in some capacity, but it's a teaching method where students learn by actively engaging in real world and personally meaningful projects. Okay, so your first activity on your note taker, you'll find this activity described, but you're gonna reflect on the following questions and record your responses. So take 2 minutes to just do a free write about the funds of knowledge that you gained while you were growing up. What were the things that you learned in your community about life, about yourself, about navigating the world? And then thinking about what ways the SEL program in your school or your classroom speaks to your students' personal experiences and cultural identities. So take about 3 minutes to jot down some notes, and then we will come back together. Okay, I just put the note catcher link in the chat again, if anyone didn't have it. Take another minute to finish up. And I want to just give people another minute to finish up because not everyone had the note catcher link. But while we're doing that, if anyone, I would love to see some comments in the chat, or if you want to unmute, when you think about the SEL practices in your classroom or in your school, um, do you feel that they are, um, that they are inclusive of a variety of cultural identities, or or is that even being taken into consideration? Okay. Well, that's something to think about, and we're going to move on. That's great. Someone said that their school does take that into consideration. Excellent. So SEL alone is not enough. Um, it's a key, while SEL is a key part of an effective classroom, SEL that does not also is not also culturally responsive and sustaining runs the risk of exacerbating educational inequity, perpetuating hierarchies, and harming our students. And I think that it's not uncommon for this to happen, and I don't think it is ever, well, I think it's often not intentional that it happens. um it's People have the best of intentions, but things just aren't always considered. Okay, so we are going to watch this video, and it's Dina Simmons. um so she and her research shows that when SEL is not grounded in culturally responsive sustaining education, it runs the risk of becoming white supremacy with a hug. She points to the need to be culturally responsive and sustaining educational principles into educational design so that learners see themselves and the impacts that the system, sorry, let me start over. She points to the need for culturally responsive and sustaining educational systems, principles into educational design so that learners see themselves and the systems that impact them. To be culturally sustaining, SEL must move beyond improving student behaviors or working on decontextualized skills. It must give learners the opportunity to reflect on and make connections through their personal experiences. Speaking to students' personal experiences requires us to create student-centered learning environments that affirm our students' cultural identities and develop students' abilities to connect across differences. And this video, as well as the article that she wrote, are going to be linked in the resources that I will give you at the end of the session. But for right now, we're going to just watch her talk.
when I think about the future, I cannot think about the past. Think about myself, a little Black girl in the Bronx, and my experience and my journey to get to be standing right here, right now, and all the pedigree and social capital that I acquired, and how damaged I am now, and how every single day I pick up pieces of myself. So when I think about the future of SEL, and I think about schooling and education in general, I have to ask this question: how can we practice and implement SEL to ensure that it doesn't cause harm? I think it's important for us to know that most of the time where we do our education or schooling initiatives, it has happened within a broken system of education with a history of exclusion and inequity. Our schooling system is inequity by design. So when we think about what we implement and what we do, we have to think about the larger system and the larger context to ensure that we're not perpetuating the damage and the harm that is done to too many students like me, too many students who look like me. And so I can't help asking the second question: what is our why? What is our why? So some of us who've been here in these past 2 days have been thinking about, why are we doing this work? When I was at my pre-session, school climate came up, academic achievement came up. We know what the research tells us. But in my travels and the work that I've done with schools and districts throughout the nation, I have seen that that why changes depending on the students. So that when we're speaking about Black and Brown students, that SEL is about remediation. It is about saving Black and Brown children from themselves. It is about compliance and following rules. But when I speak to other districts with privileged kids, it's about college and career readiness. It's about enhancement. So when we think about this work, and if our why is different depending on who we're speaking about, we have to ask ourselves, how are we complicit in injustice? How are we complicit in the harm and the damage that happens to our young people? Bettina Love talks about, she's from the University of Georgia, some of y'all know her. She talks about the spirit murdering of our young people. We have to ensure that this work that we do is not spirit murdering our children. But I will add too, that many of the teachers and educators in the room have also been spirit murdered. Every single day, like I said, I'm picking myself up. It is important for us to know too, good intentions don't equal good outcomes. Just because you mean well does not mean that the outcome is going to be good. I can't tell you how often when I was growing up, going to boarding school in Connecticut, and how often people came to me and said, "Oh, Dina, you're so articulate." And I would say, and that was, the intention was good. But the way I received it was as if they didn't believe that I could be. Or how often people think my hair is awesome. Thank you, all I know. And how often folks would, put their hand in my hair, and how often I felt dehumanized or like a spectacle. Don't touch my hair. Good intentions don't equal good outcomes. And my second point is that anything can be used as a weapon. I sleep with a bat near my bed because growing up, I felt very unsafe when it got dark. A bat is for baseball, but I can use it as a weapon. So we have to be very careful and really critical about how we think about the work that we do and ensure that we have a broken system. And if we don't think widely and strategically and deliberately about this system that is broken, anything can be used as a weapon. So this work of equity, of achieving equity, requires courage and discomfort. I know that some of the things I said today may make people feel a little uncomfortable, but it's through that discomfort that we grow. It is through that discomfort that we try to do better and be better. And I'll also just, since I'm speaking from the heart, every single day when I walk into this world, I feel uncomfortable. Because when I walk into the room, the first assumption that people have about me is not a positive one. So every single day I feel uncomfortable. How do we create and change the system so that the two gentlemen who spoke up here earlier today have different options? That is our work. And it's hard, and it takes courage, and it's going to be uncomfortable. How many of you are about that life? I want to hear from you. How many are about that life? So in closing, I would say for this work to happen, we have to apply an equity lens. Actually, you know what? We just have to start seeing what it is. We don't like to say what it is because we don't like to talk about race in this country. We cannot heal our wounds if we don't tend to them. So we need to apply an equity and an anti-racist lens. So I leave you with one question, which is, how can we leverage SEL to create the social change that we need? That is not a question for you to, not just to ponder, but this is an action plan for you. What is your action plan to ensure that we leverage SEL to create the social change we so desperately need?
Does anyone have any thoughts or comments on that video that you'd like to drop in the chat or unmute? Anything that resonates or that you can connect to? Yes, Nicholas.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I think that the points that she made were extremely deep. I think that she really touched upon problems in the lack of culturally responsive teaching, and not only teaching, but just the way that people communicate in general to her specifically was very um eye-opening to, I would hope, to many, because it was extremely important to be cognizant of the way that sometimes our good intentions could not come with the same outcome. So I just thought it was such an important piece, and something that I think really needs, just as educators, we need to be cognizant of.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I completely agree. You know, especially for me as a white educator, I just had to question some of my own like good intentions and wonder if I was doing harm that I had no idea. So I found it to be really eye-opening, and just it's made me think a lot about everything. I'm just yeah, I'm just looking at the chat. It's hard to ignore that the honors and gifted clubs and classes are a majority white, and our school has only about 15% white students. Yeah. Yeah, there is so much to what she said and so many things to think about, and so many conversations to have, and you know, uncomfortable ones to say the least, but necessary. So that you will have the link to that video as well as the article that she wrote, so that you can refer back to it and share with colleagues if you would like. Okay, we're going to move on, but please, oh, I'm going to just, Hispanic people still not in an equity situation. What resonated with me was the term of equity and how that word is used. It's more than race. It's also poverty. Makes me think of how many times the word is used in school or to describe who we teach. How different SEL looks for different groups was so true. Yeah, that was something else that hit me because she's totally right. I had never thought of it in those terms. Yeah, there's a lot there in that video. I've seen it several times, and every time I see it, I take something else away. Okay, so SEL is not a standalone program, as she really kind of highlights in that video. It can't be a once a week thing. It has to be relevant to all learners, and it has to be responsive to the students and families and communities that we serve. It's an essential part of education and human development. It has to be prioritized, and we have to attend to the many responsibilities to holistically serve our students. And we need to integrate best practices into a cohesive whole. I mean, truly, I think there are obviously very specific practices that you can use that are SEL in terms of building community in your classroom, like, icebreakers or whatever else. And those are important, but it's really the whole climate that you create in your classroom. Is it a safe space for everybody? Is everybody seen and valued for who they are? And how do you know? So it's there is definitely a lot to think about as we think about this topic. It's not a quick fix for sure. Okay, so 3 strategies that you can use, you can think about as you try to make SEL more culturally responsive and sustaining. You want to elevate student voices. You want to celebrate the cultural assets within your classroom, and you want to provide mirrors and windows. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what all of these things are. So when you're elevating student voices, you're building on the funds of knowledge and personal experiences during SEL instruction to ensure that it's relevant to your students' lives. You want to tailor your instruction to start where they are, which is really the way any instruction should be done. We always want to start with where students are and then think about how we help support them as they move forward. An example is starting a lesson about self-direction to start by asking students what they already know and then build from there. Celebrating classroom cultural assets. We want to build self-awareness and help students identify, create their own self-identity through their personal, cultural, and linguistic assets. We want to celebrate the diversity of those assets as a tool to help students along their path of integrating their personal and social identities toward greater self-awareness. And it also provides an opportunity for students to examine their biases, which is a key capacity of self-awareness. And I think, at the end of the day, everybody, regardless of who they are, where they come from, everybody wants to be seen and everybody wants to feel accepted and included. And we just need to think about what that looks like for all of our students and how we can incorporate that into classroom culture and school culture. So when celebrating students' cultures, it's important to avoid comparing students to a dominant culture's norms, help students see that social emotional skills can look different across individuals and contexts, and there are many pathways to developing our individual SEL capacity. So mirrors and windows mirrors are going to reflect a student's culture. And so that's culturally sustaining. It provides an opportunity for the social emotional content to look and feel like their life and what they know. So that's important. Everyone wants to feel like they see themselves around them. And then windows help give students a new view into someone else's world. It helps the students to empathize with others from diverse backgrounds, to develop social awareness, and we want to offer both. And again, that's true for students. It's true for us as educators as well. As we're teaching this to students, are we, walking the walk, and are we doing that as well? So thinking about embedding SEL into the curriculum, to be effective, it must be culturally responsive and sustaining and integrated into the curriculum through explicit instruction. 2 portable strategies for doing so include project-based learning and civic learning. We're going to dig a little deeper into that. So project-based learning it can take many forms, but it's at the end of what it really is an authentic, engaging, and complex question or problem that students have to think about, collaborate on, and solve. And we want them, with the project-based learning, we want to recreate some of, real life challenges that they will be experiencing outside of the classroom. And, when you think about it and you go back to some of the things that we want to be promoting, like self-efficacy and social awareness, you can see how those characteristics would be developed through project-based learning. Okay, so project-based learning is a teaching method that allows students to gain knowledge by requiring them to work for an extended period of time to investigate a complex problem or question. They're given the freedom and opportunity to explore real-world problems and develop a deeper and more enriched understanding. So a project like this is leveraging the power of collectivism, and it also can be leveraging a cultural asset that many students in the classroom share. But the thing with, all of these things, and I think this gets lost sometimes, I know it certainly got lost for me when I was teaching, is that we can't simply put students into a group and tell them to work together and then expect it to go smoothly. They definitely need to be taught the skills that they're going to need to collaborate. There needs to be a lot of explicit instruction around it. There needs to be a lot of conversation. It's going to probably get bumpy sometimes. I mean, think about a group of adults trying to work together. There are inevitably tensions that arise and conflicts and things that need to be worked through. So it's not going to be any different with students. And we do students a disservice when we put them together without providing that scaffolding, and then get frustrated when, it doesn't work out. So thinking about, how do we build that culture so that we can have something like project-based learning or some other type of collaborative working. So we want a well-constructed guiding question, and we want them to practice cognitive flexibility, perspective taking skills, critical thinking. We want to think about having them incorporate their identity into it. Yeah, it is difficult when you have kids coming from different families, different cultures, different values. How do we navigate all of that? It's definitely a challenge. Okay, so project-based learning includes the following elements. Significant content. This is where you're outlining your learning goals. Looking at your standards and referring to them frequently is helpful. You don't need to fit every standard in, but you want to ensure that you're meeting some of them. And I always advocate for 2 or 3 standards at most. So from a literacy perspective, I always think about 2 literacy standards that support each other and then a writing standard. If you're in a content area, you'd want to think about a reading standard that supports a content standard and then a writing standard. The second element that you want to think about is the need to know. So you want to create a hook for students at the beginning of a project to get them interested and engaged. You want to generate curiosity in the classroom and get them hyped up to want to do this work. So, you might have a video, you might have a guest speaker or a lively class discussion, and you want the question to be challenging enough that students are going to want to talk about it more, to investigate it more, to challenge themselves and kind of rise to the occasion. So the question is going to have to be something that requires in-depth inquiry, and it's going to be challenging. It should be something with a purpose. And then all of the activities that students are doing is going to be moving them along that path to finding the answer to that question. The other element that you want to have is voice and choice by the students. So they get to make some decisions about how they're going to proceed, what they're going to do. So it could just be the way they present the information. So brochures, infographics, different mediums that they can choose from. And you don't have to give them 10 choices. You might want to just give them 2 or 3, but so that they have some element of choice in how they're presenting their work or how they are doing their investigation. And then you're thinking about your 21st century skills, technology, collaboration, creativity, communication, critical thinking. Those are all 21st century skills. Those are all things that, potential employers are looking for. Those are all just skills that we need in life to do well. And then, well, we talked about in-depth inquiry and innovation. So the question needs to be something that they can research, and, have conversations about. And then you're also going to provide an opportunity for reflection and revision, so that students have an opportunity to get feedback from you and or from their peers, and then make changes. And then there would be a public presentation at the end so that they can show off their work. And that could be in the class, it could be having parents come in, it could be doing it, for a younger grade. There are lots of different ways that could be done. There is an article that this information is based on. It will be linked in your resources page as well, so that you can refer back to that. Okay, so this is just a diagram to show the elements of project-based learning. And this is an example of a checklist that you could use to help both in the planning for you, and then also, well, really it's for your benefit for the planning. So these are the elements that you want to make sure you've included. You create your plan, and then you go through and make sure, everything's there. And if not, then you tweak it. Civic learning is learning that's going to help people connect with their own voice, agency, and self-efficacy, and learn how to work with others to create solutions. I think of civic learning as, and project-based learning is this as well, but civic learning, I think, as having more of a community focus. How can I, as an activist, as somebody who wants to create change or help people, what does that look like? How do I build those skills? How do I believe that I can make a difference. In combination with SEL, civic learning allows students to build self-direction and social awareness by reflecting on issues they care about in their communities and relationship and decision-making skills to collaborate on solutions. Okay, I have another video for you.
Civic engagement we see as being critical for students learning how to make responsible decisions and collaborate.
It's encouraging students inherently to see themselves as agents of change. It's not just that we're learning about these issues, but they are imagining themselves as part of the solution to this problem.
I think civic engagement is teaching the standards. It's going above and beyond the standards.
They're going to not only learn about their community, but also start to transform their community. At this point, what we really want to see in every classroom is a rigorous environment with kids really pushing their thinking that's linked to a community-based issue that also incorporates some work-based learning experiences where kids can start thinking about how they're going to apply the skills that they're learning, the thinking skills, the soft skills in the real world when they exit high school.
What steps do you want to take to actually do something about that?
You got to start at your neighborhood.
The civic engagement work has given students a sense of agency, a sense of voice, and like a structure to think about how can I actually do something with the things that I'm learning, and to really see school as like a springboard to community engagement as opposed to report card grade.
And you, Tony, I think we're also suggesting something different of like gaining allies, of reaching out to existing organizations like Black Lives Matter. And we know that they have an Oakland connection. That's also an action step.
So the digital revolution is really changing the ways in which politics are practiced. It's where young people go to get information. It's often where they get to express their viewpoints or where they enter into dialogue. It's increasingly important that schools support young people in meeting some of the challenges that these new opportunities can present. So, for example, while it's true that people can go online and find information about just about anything, they can also go online and find misinformation. And it's really important for educators to help young people figure out how to tell what's credible.
I think for a lot of our students, you know, social media is a thing where you take lots of selfies and people like them or comment on them or don't. But I think the fact that in some of this work, we're giving other ways to interact with the internet, right? So as an example, the fact that when they did community research, some of them did survey outreach, and students who they didn't know at all across Oakland took their survey about the experiences of being an undocumented student or the experience of being a foster care youth. I think that sort of potential for making connections in that way has been exciting for my students.
We find that when we really teach students about issues that they care about and we give them the opportunity to bring their lives into the conversations in classrooms, they're more engaged, they're more passionate, and they're more willing to invest in their education and see it as something that's relevant for them than if we weren't talking about these issues.
So manifestations, contemporary problem, and root causes.
Before EDA, I felt like a lot of my students left my classroom feeling kind of deflated. I was not setting them up to be more hopeful or engaged in our society. The focus of civic engagement that EDA brought has been really crucial for keeping me motivated in my work and really providing that final piece of the puzzle for students of identifying problems. And now let's learn about how we can take action.
In 2012, a group of us in the Civic Engagement Research Group began a partnership with Oakland Unified and with the National Writing Project to think about ways that we could expand access to civic learning opportunities throughout Oakland. And in fact, our goal was to reach all young people in the Oakland high schools. The initiative is called Educating for Democracy in the Digital Age. Another big rationale for the initiative was that our research was showing that young people in different communities get differing amounts of the opportunities that matter when it comes to preparing people to be fully engaged and effective civic and political actors in their communities.
So what do you guys think about that 95?
The EDA initiative has two major components. The first is really about working with our teachers and supporting them to develop professionally around how to teach civic engagement in the classroom. The second major component of EDA is really convincing people about the value and importance of civic engagement, because most school districts do not focus on civic education right now. And so part of our effort is to really convince people that this is something our schools need to be paying attention to, particularly in this era of high stakes testing.
One of the things that we did through the work and leadership of Youngwon Choi was to expand the district's graduate profile from being preparing all kids to be college and career ready to preparing all kids to be college, career, and community ready. And the district has responded by trying to create time and space and support for teachers in various schools to create curriculum and to work with young people to pursue those goals.
We can create technology that help people.
The areas where I've seen students that are absolutely inspired to go make change in the world happens when they're addressing real issues in their community. And if we can build a classroom environment that fosters that type of thinking, that's what this is all about.
I think the most important thing for anyone who's really interested in doing civic engagement work in a community and a district is to really listen to teachers, to listen to students, to listen to families about what it is that matters to them and what they care about, and to start from there. The initiative will grow out of the interests and passions of the community and their voices. And that's where that sense of empowerment will come from.
So both project-based learning and civic learning are highly portable strategies that can be implemented across learning environments. So they can be done in the classroom, they can be done virtually. You can think about, having components of both. If just in terms of setting up communication outside of the classroom, if that is something that is viable, like if you have the technology to support that. But obviously it can all be done in the classroom as well. And these are just some ideas about how they can be, both of them can be done on a more virtual level, or at least partly virtual level. Okay, so activity 2 is in your note catcher, and I will put the note catcher link in the chat again because I feel like we've had a couple more people come in. But you're going to take 5 minutes. Actually, let's see. Yeah, you're going to take 3 minutes to brainstorm a civic learning or project-based learning activity, and just use the table in the note catcher to write down some of your ideas, so that the ideas that you walk away from today with something that you can think about implementing in your classroom. So the link to the note catcher is in the chat. And I'm going to set a timer for 3 minutes, and then we will come back and we will do a wrap up. Okay, finish up, and while you're finishing up, I am putting some links in the chat. And I will explain what all of those links are. Okay, so we are almost at the end of our time, and I wanted to just make sure you had a couple of pieces of information. First of all, you should, no, that's not it. Okay, so you should receive a certificate, a CTLE certificate for this course within 24 to 48 hours. So you should get something by Thursday. If you don't receive it in that time frame, you can reach out to admin@solvedconsulting.com. That link is in the chat. I've also put my email, Christine Del Negro @solvedconsulting.com. You can CC me on any emails that you send to admin, and I will take note of it and, keep my eye on it and make sure that it gets processed. Sometimes, especially, I'm going to tell you, after today, they're probably going to be a little overwhelmed. So the 24-hour window, I would give it till Friday. If you haven't gotten anything by end of business on Friday, reach out. Just because we're doing 18 courses today. So that's a lot of certificates that they're going to have to be getting out. But so definitely follow up if you haven't received anything by Friday, and we'll make sure that you get your certificate. You can sign up for more courses, either synchronously or asynchronously, and you can scan the corresponding barcodes or QR codes on the slide. I've also put a link in the chat for the Solved website to the course page, and you can decide there if you want asynchronous or synchronous, if you find that easier. Sometimes the QR codes don't work for me. So if you're like me and you prefer just to do it on the website, you can do it that way. The other thing is that if you refer up to 6 DOE employees to the CTLE courses, you will receive an Amazon gift card for your classroom. And lastly, I've also put in the link for the resource page. So all of the links that are relevant to today's course, including the videos, the articles that some of the slides were based on, are all linked in that document. So that is there for you. So if you, okay, and then I'm putting in, the thing I just put into the chat was the survey form. You need to fill that out to receive your CTLE certificate. That'll just take you a couple of minutes. Okay, so yes, to answer your question, you need to fill out a separate form. That's been linked in the chat. And then as for how you refer someone, just let them know and have them sign up. And I believe there's a question when they sign up, if they were referred, they just need to give your name. And then if 6 people do that, you'll get that gift card. Any questions? That's a lot of information that I just threw at you. Okay. Fill out the form. I'm going to stay on for a couple of minutes in case any questions come up. Thank you all for your time today. So, good question. You input your DOE email, and if you can put your school Google email in as well. There was an issue with the DOE emails for a while. It's been resolved, but if you can put both, put both. So thank you so much for your time today. I hope that you found this information helpful. Again, we have, after this one, we've got 15 other courses being offered today. You can sign up through those QR codes. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day, whether you are spending it with Solved or your school colleagues, or doing something else. And hopefully we will see you soon. But I will be here for a couple of more minutes in case anyone has any other questions. Thank you all.